Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And today we've got a special treat for you. We've got one of the greatest financial minds here to co-host with me. And we're going to be talking about an organization that, if they had their way, financiers would be marched to their own extinction and treated like history has treated many financiers in the past. I'm afraid the folks at Extinction Rebellion are up to no good again. And this time, they've gone way too far. We're going to get into this. Please welcome, it's Finance Fridays, Jonathan Honig.
Great to be with you, Rucka, and with all of our viewers and listeners from around the world, with the Ayn Center UK, but we've really got a global audience. And thank you, Marilyn, who's already kicked off the Super Chats. We want to see you support us on Super Chat. It helps, as they say, keeps the lights on. But Rucka, apropos of your setup here, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't be we're supposed to be turning the lights off, right? At least according to Extinction Rebellion. I mean, let's just remind people of what happened in the UK just a few days ago. And, often they say, well, we have to warn you, this is troubling video because it's somebody being shot or beaten up. There's none of that in this, but look at this. Let me stop. Look at this unbelievably troubling video. What you're looking at is a woman pleading for this Extinction Rebellion to move their blockade. They've blocked the road. She's got a sick mother in the ambulance. They're trying to get to the hospital, and these people have blocked the road. It seems to be a pretty normal thing for Extinction Rebellion. So she's pleading with them, please move, please move. They're not moving at all. And, her mother and many others are suffering. Unless you say, well, maybe this was a one-off, this doesn't really happen all the time. This is what the leader of the group said, if I have it. The leader of the group, when asked, said, in effect, I'll bring it up. It said, in effect, yeah, we would happily block an ambulance because our goal is a greater goal. It's getting the environmental movement out. This is who's dominating the environmental movement and what used to be the ecology movement, and certainly a lot of what's happening in the UK right now.
I mean, it's like hard to believe. It's just hard to believe something like that. The apathy of like hearing a woman please, like begging, please, can I bring my mother through here to get her to a hospital? But the Extinction Rebellion.
Here's this gentleman, saying on a UK television show, yes, this is the leader saying, I would block an ambulance with a dying patient, for that purpose. For them, Rucka, it's a moral issue. They think it's perfectly moral. The environment is the main priority. That's the value for them.
Well, what they are is consistent within their own context, which is why philosophy is ultimately the battle. I've been reading Nietzsche. I did a little bit on this channel. I've been talking about it in various channels. And Nietzsche, he in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, announces God is dead. So far, I'm on board. And so what's the new sort of greater good? What's the higher power you give yourself to now that God is irrelevant? The earth. The earth. That doesn't mean today's environmentalists like Nietzsche. That doesn't mean Nietzsche is the only philosopher that contributed to this. But that does seem to be the secular answer to religion in modern times and given by many philosophers. It's, no religion is passe. Instead, give yourself to the earth. It does seem to be this kind of reoccurring theme with a lot of people who consider themselves to be secular. Yeah, we're rational. We're not mystical at all. We properly see the earth as our mother, as our Lord, as the thing we all must give ourselves to because it's all we are. It's all we come from the earth. We're going to rejoin the earth one day. So sans a better philosophy like the one that the namesake of this channel provides, sans a good philosophy, one can fall down this hole. One can go down this path and think that, yes, this is the antithesis to religion. This is the proper way to live on earth, to put the earth above any individual human. This sort of haunts me, especially because as a teenager, before I read Ayn Rand, although I never blocked any traffic, I would have looked at something like this with sort of like some sort of approval, like, yep, that's it. This is what life's about. If you're going to live, then live for the earth, or definitely stop civilization, halt it, do what you can to screw the rich. And why should this lady get to a hospital? I would have thought, as a snarky, nihilistic teenager. Why should she get to a hospital while billions of animals are marched to their slaughter every year? So philosophy is life and death, and it's very important that we take philosophy seriously and try our best to get to a good one. Thank you, Marilyn and Robert, by the way, for the super chats. He says Extinction Rebellion equals Extinction Advocates.
Yeah, and Rand was talking about this so explicitly. This is I was going to get virtue of the return to the primitive. This is a place where Rand offered so much perspective on it, just what the whole, her day they called it the ecology movement, but what the environmental movement, which has only grown and grown and grown since her death, is all about. And it's exactly what I think Robert has said, that this is my own perspective, not Rand's explicit words, but they're not for man's flourishing. They're for man's demise. They're for capitalism's demise. And as you said, this is not just one off. This is what this group and what all these groups have done for years is they block roads. Here's a woman who's fasting for the environment, so she's going to starve herself for the environment. Here's a guy who taped himself or super glued himself to a plane because he wants to keep the plane from flying. Their goal is not man's well-being. Bringing traffic to a halt, stopping oil, and stopping banks. That's it. And this whole question, Rucka, of are these terrorists? We kind of even thought for a moment here, or could these people say, well, they're demeaning us by causing us terrorists? But Dr. Brooke and many others, as over the course of the so-called war on terrorism, they always made the point that it's not Muslims per se or Muslim extremism that's terrorism. Terrorism is a tactic, right? So yeah, these people are terrorists. They're using they're killing people literally to further their political goals of basically shutting down the environment. And we'll talk about what Rand said about that. But these are terrorists. These Extinction Rebellion people, they're causing the extinction, and terrorist is the appropriate name.
Yeah, and I mean, we see this type of attitude towards economic activity all over the place. I mean, when the lockdowns began due to the pandemic, you heard people saying like, "Why would you put like the economy above life?" As if the two are separable. Like, life to me matters more than the economy. So what if the economy takes a hit? What do they think the economy actually is? What do they think? It's some platonic floating thing out there, like the aliens are trading with each other in heaven? I mean, literally, it's life and death to people. So what difference does it make if someone's blocking your car to get to a hospital, or if someone's just depriving you of the ability to work for your food, or if the government is making the dollar in your hand worth not enough to buy yourself a bite of food because of inflation? I mean, to the extent that the government or anyone is blocking economic activity from happening, they are stealing your life and they are stopping people from living. So this is, this is what people don't understand, and we need to be consistent about this. We need to understand that it's not that we worship the economy and give ourselves to it, like Nietzsche said, give yourself to the earth. I mean, that would be another variant of the same mistake. We need to properly see that the economy, it's a concept that describes a series of spontaneous or planned activity between individuals, usually for the betterment of their own individual lives, and usually with long-term goals in mind, and most often for the extension and fulfillment of their lives. It is, again, life and death.
Well, and for the ecology movement, their goal is death. And again, Sammy, or not, Christopher and some others on our chat made the point of how prophetic Miss Rand was in this. This is her comment back in the 70s. It has been reported in the press many times that the issue of pollution is to be the next big crusade of the new left activists after the war in Vietnam peters out. And just as peace was not their goal or motive in that crusade, so clean air is not their goal or motive in this one. I mean, that was like generations ago. And what she said is straight on. Don't be fooled by the environmental movement's so-called goal of a better environment. All I can say is think of that line from the movie Wall Street. They love animals, but they hate people. Their goal is not man's flourishing. It's nature sans man. It's for us to have zero carbon footprint. And obviously, Rucka, the only way for that.
Yeah, and to the extent that they see a place for man on Earth, or human beings on Earth, to be more gender neutral, is they see the ideal as tribal, simply living within your own a square mile or square 5 miles of where you were born, life as it was meant to be, the way they see it, whether in Africa,
like digging up your own food every day and eating little maggots and stuff,
or someone's going to be the dictator and have others dig it up for him. The holy spiritual leader can probably sit a little more comfortably with his few wives and have slaves provide. But the point is, even the dictator won't live too lavishly. He's not going to have the technology. He's not going to be polluting the way that modern industry does. So to them, the standard is nature unmolested, so to speak, nature, so to speak, like the earth without human activity. That to them is the ideal. So anything that moves us farther in that direction is therefore good. And anything that leaves a footprint is bad. We got from Marilena Super Chat, $2. She says it should be legal for the plane to take off, referring to when the person strapped himself to the plane. I mean, these are actually good questions. Like, certainly when it came to the blocking of traffic when they're trying to get to a hospital, I was watching it thinking like,
how about if you're just trying to get to work or go
I'm with you. But like, I was wondering, like, when it's this much of an emergency, like you got someone on route to a hospital and traffic is being blocked, like, should it be then legal to just drive over them? Like, I'm not a legal scholar. I don't take these decisions lightly. Like any of us could just sit around and figure, like, just emotionally say, I hate these Extinction Rebellion people and, go run them over. It's a tough question, but how do you deal with irrational people when they're blocking traffic? Are you supposed to let your mother die in the passenger seat so that until these people decide to let you through? Also, thank you, Duncan Curry, for the $4.99. He says, where are the lawyers? These eco freaks need their pantsuit off. Jonathan, you probably have a lawyer.
What I see is that they are treated with kid gloves, that the security force is oftentimes standing there watching them and looking at them, because anytime they are physically removed, of course, what do they do? I mean, they're looking for that scene. They're looking to cause that problem, and they're doing it at everyone's expense. In fact, in a new textbook of Americanism, Miss Rand writes specifically about this idea of protest. The streets are for public transit, and you do not have the rights, as long as streets are so-called publicly owned, you don't have the right to blockade everyone else's. I think, to Duncan's point, I'd like to see these people really put the full force of the law against them, not a little, one night in jail, because then they come out as a martyr to the Earth Liberation Front or whatever they're called now. This has been going on for years, Rucka. It's not like this is anything new. Go back to back in the early 2000s. Remember, they were torching Hummers, like the Earth Liberation Front were torching car dealerships. And even back in the late 90s, these psychos, they set fire to a whole Vale Mountain and killed people. Again, Earth Liberation Front, eco justice, and this mindset's again been going around since Rand's time, and it's all about bringing man down, destroying capitalism, destroying the technology. Exactly, you said, that keeps us alive.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in high school, one of my hippie friends, he handed out a bunch of stickers that said, "I'm changing the environment. Ask me how." And he said, "Put these on unsuspecting SUVs." And I never did, but I thought like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, show those yuppies, show those rich D-bags driving around their SUVs that, they're the bad guy. Many years later, when I was done with high school, driving my Toyota Corolla, working hard, for minimum wage just to be able to make my car payment, somebody keyed on my hood. They wrote F word, the F word, your mom. So F your mom, they wrote on the hood of my car. So, I mean, this is just pure, teenage nihilism. the way I interpret that. But I mean, are those two types of teenagers fundamentally different? The type that just vandalizes my eco-friendly car, so, you know, relatively for no reason at all, versus the hippie handing out stickers and say, slap these on SUVs. Are ultimately, they're both anti-life. They're anti-values. They are trying to get in the way of people living the life that they want to live and interrupting their lives and vandalizing their vehicle in some way or another. Fundamentally, these types of people are the same. We need to be pro-values, pro-life.
Yeah, pro-life in the I hate to say objectivist, you know, and yeah, in the true sense, exactly. Although, you know, Rucka, this is, you know, I've not studied this obviously really as much as you said. I'm a student of objectivism and philosophy writ large, but you know, it seems to me in a weird way, the person who just keys the car, that's nihilist, right? It's just destruction for destruction. But what's so frightening about the ecology, now environmental movement, is that they've got a really distinct explicit philosophy. It's not just destruction, but they have a whole kind of culture. And you know, Rand said this years ago. This is all from Return to the Primitive, that you know, they're against the lowest human tribe cannot survive without that alleged source of pollution, fire. So the ecologists are not just nihilists. They are, as Rand says, the new vultures swarming to extinguish that fire. There's something about her prophecy that now people need to be reading that, sharing that. She saw this all coming, and it's nothing new. The environmental movement is nothing new. It's just become more angry, more dangerous, because now this, as a kind of our super chatter was saying, like, this is being tolerated, blocking traffic, destroying factories, setting banks on fire. Their goal is not man's well-being, as Rand said.
Yeah, I love that that quote you showed from Rand, and it's amazing how these ancient myths often are like spot on in terms, like with the importance of things like fire. They see how fire truly changed the world, and on some level they must have carried this sort of oral tradition through the generations of how at one point someone discovered how to start a fire, and that made all the difference. What a brave soul that must have been, or souls. Maybe it happened by multiple people at different times. You know, so around the time that I was hanging out with people that hand out stickers to slap on SUVs, I was listening to a lot of great music that I still love, but you know, the lyrics were often setting me down a bit of a wrong path. And the band Tool, with one of their biggest hits, Schism, goes, "The light that fueled our fire burned a hole between us, so we cannot see to reach an end, crippling our communication." There's this ongoing theme among intellectuals and artists by extension that communication was better before we had language. Communication was better before we had technology and fire and long-term planning. That the cavemen, or the simplest of tribes, they understood each other because they didn't have to say anything. Life was simple, pristine, and communication was strong. And we've only moved farther away from that the more we've conceptualized, the more advanced our communication has gotten. And of course, the opposite is true. So in those lyrics, you know, they're blaming it sounds like they're blaming the invention of fire on this lack of communication. And then reading Ayn Rand in her novel in Atlas Shrugged, the cigarette salesman says, he says, "I like cigarettes. Fire, a dangerous force tamed at the fingertips." Now that's a very different take on fire. Howard Rourke, thousands of years ago, someone invented fire, and he was probably burned at the stake that he showed his brothers how to light. Very different. Definitely not making technology the bad guy. Definitely not making fire the bad guy. Fire, properly handled, is what we need to live, and it raises our standard of living beyond what anyone could ever have imagined.
Yeah. It's the beginning of us being able to control and tame the environment. I mean, Dr. Brooke and many others always saying this, you know, we're not built as human beings with the claws and all that, where you know, we have to create everything we want to. Rand has a great quote. I didn't put it up there, but like, you should thank the smoke. Remember that quote? Like, you should thank the grimiest smokestack you can find. You know, you should thank the industry that creates the whole world. And of course, Alex Epstein and many others have done great work about the more carbon emissions, the higher man's life, the more GDP, the more wealth has been created. I mean, if you want that period of low carbon emissions and zero carbon emissions go back to the dark ages. Where, as you said, I mean, fire was a great achievement, and you were sitting in your little, shtetl, hoping that you could get some little bugs and crabs to eat. Everything that we enjoy, all the technology is created by fire, to your point, Rucka, which it's like man's mind, right? It's the ability to take something like, I mean, where did you get fire before we created fire? Like lightning struck and then a fire started, and then maybe you could take a piece of meat and roast it. I mean, now we have, body flay. We've come a long way because of man's mind taming that fire. And that's what they're against.
Right. If fire comes from the gods, the way the prehistoric saw it, like, oh, it came from God, it's a gift. Okay, then it's good, and it might burn us all down. But it's the good kind of fire. But when somebody actually discovers how to start one, he's suspect. What's he? Who does this guy think he is? God or one of the gods? And you would think today's intellectuals, you would think philosophers, you would think alleged seculars would be more advanced than the prehistoric cavemen who had some excuse. They didn't know very much about anything, so they have some excuse for being so mystical. You would think that today we would progress beyond worshiping Gaia, the goddess of Earth, right? Thank you, Rat Lover, for the 20 pounds. Thank you, Marilyn, for the $2 American. She says, F them, they're trash. I think referring to Extinction Rebellion. Yeah, Damien, Alaska with 99 cents. And Marilyn again with $2 says carbon dioxide makes trees and plants grow. I mean, that, I'm reminded also of 1984 when Winston is being beat up and sort of brainwashed or kind of treated by the party when he's finally kind of beyond the curtain. And he's being told, here are the facts about the party. I think from what I remember, the representative of the party tells Winston, he says, the reason the communists and the fascists failed is that they were always trying to pretend that what they want is a good life here on Earth. But we have no pretense of that. Obviously paraphrasing here. And I think with Extinction Rebellion and all the nihilistic environmentalists, you see the same thing. The more you tell them, no, technology is good. Carbon is good. Technology, it serves our lives. It allows us to not only live cleaner, but also healthier and longer. And they're just like, you think human life is what we want?
No, and the more you sacrifice, the better, more virtuous you're seen. There's that great Simpsons joke where Lisa's like, I recycle, and the other guy's like, well, I pocket mulch, right? He just puts dirt in his pockets and he's doing mulch in his pockets. Thank you again, Marion Lean, who points out about carbon dioxide. And Enric makes, the point too, is like, if you want that environment without light, North Korea is the best example. Literally at darkness at night, maybe if they're lucky, they have lighters and stuff, but it's dark. And for me, that the pop culture reference is Rucka is Castaway. Years ago, Tom Hanks, he's lost on an island. It's like he's starting over in that pre-technology era, and there's no fire, shivering at night. And Rand writes about this. She says ecology, and again, what is the environmentalist goal as a social principle? She says condemn cities, culture, industry, technology, the intellect, and advocates men's return to nature, as you said, just nature, the state of grunting sub-animals digging the soil with their bare hands. And that's exactly what it is in nature, in North Korea, and anywhere else the environmentalists get their way.
Yeah. You look at that famous picture of North and South Korea at night, and the South is obviously lit up with all these beautiful lights, and the North is mostly pitch black. And there you go, environmentalist paradise. In that same Simpsons episode, Lisa said, she tells this older hippie she has a crush on. She says, I'm a vegetarian and I'm thinking of becoming vegan. And the guy says, I don't eat anything that casts a shadow. And he shows this pile of mud that he's eating right now. And
it's exactly it.
Don't eat anything that casts a shadow. Do everything you can to minimize your footprint. And if Extinction Rebellion got their way, you think they'd be satisfied by stopping industry? They would ultimately, or if you look at the animal rights activists, are they going to stop at animal rights, or are Extinction Rebellion going to stop at, forest life and trees and plants and all that? They're not going to stop there. They're going to then move it to rocks. Why should life be treated better than rocks and dirt? They're going to say. What is it about life that thinks it's better, superior to inanimate matter? And then we're going to see life, human and otherwise, being sacrificed to objects or naturally occurring stuff on Earth. And if you think I'm exaggerating, then you don't know the types of people we're dealing with.
Yeah, and think, there's a sense of we always have to remind people, that wealth has to be created. I mean, the wealth is not just out there. And some of our super chatters and friends online are saying, think about something that we take for granted, like, dental surgery. We think of like the old ages and people with those disgusting mouths full of like blackened teeth and always in pain, and like something as simple as everyday dental surgery that now you can get done in like 45 minutes. You're in and out, they fix it and you feel fine. Like all of the emissions that has to go into that, the pills and everything that has to be created by emissions. And even think about how much better it is now, because instead of like burning all that fires and stuff, we have we don't have it because of the environment, because of Extinction Rebellion, but we could have things like nuclear with no emissions that can power us indefinitely. But for me, Rucka, I take a little bit of sick pride, but I take pride. I mean, just in our conversation here, I've already gone through three bottles. So, I'm proud of my carbon emissions. And, we're, as objectivists, I think one of the few out there who have that pro-human life perspective on the ecology/environmental movement.
Yeah, and Enric in the chat says, "Why should the Earth be better than Venus?" I think implying like the next step of what the environmentalists or whatever they'll be called in the future, what they would say next. Why should planet Earth have all these interesting things happening on it, whereas the other planets are empty and bare?
That's natural.
Like I always say, of all these leftists and nihilists, all these people, if they actually wanted what they say they want, they would advocate for capitalism. Capitalism, it feeds the poor. Capitalism could get us off this planet so we can pollute in space where the pollution reaches nothing and affects nobody. I mean, capitalism could do so many things. It can extend life. It could make us immune to any problems of pollution. It could help the animals too, give them all types of immunities. I mean, I'm only beginning to scratch the surface of what's possible if the human mind were free to invent based on the facts of nature. But these people are not interested in improving life. They want to, what do they want? They want to destroy values is what they often won't admit, but their actions show they will. Thank you, Rat Lover, for the 10 pounds. I think brains and feelings, she says, and results of intelligence make life forms superior, if anything. And most importantly, my own life. I mean, my values, my chosen values are what I'm living for. And if the other animals and creatures consist with that, then we'll all get along. But to the extent that they're an impediment, it's going to be a problem, I say.
And let me say, it's like not even, the woman dying because these shitheads are blocking traffic. That's like, I don't want to say that's an extreme because they're going to take it even further, but like, that's a pretty obvious, ugly example. But even something like my cousin who just graduated college a year ago, and like, she wants to travel and see the world, but she's so been educated and indoctrinated that, getting on a plane is a bad thing, that she's saying, well, maybe I shouldn't travel, maybe I shouldn't explore because when I travel, all the emissions I'm using. So it's so sad because and that's what they want. Ultimately, is that self-sacrifice. You're sacrificing your life, and the more you sacrifice, the more virtuous you are. So it kind of gets back to that anti-human, anti-life, anti-enjoyment focus that is exactly what the environmental movement is about, ever since it was called the ecology movement in Rand's day.
Yeah, and Allison in the chat says, Jonathan is indeed saving the environment with his invisible bookcase. So that's nice of you, at least to sacrifice a bookcase and just have a bunch of books stacked behind you.
Well, I mean, even the books, right? I mean, that is a assault. And then, of course, even the phones, we got to charge those. And so that's an assault. Mm-hmm. So what would be really better if we just didn't have anything? And as you said, Rucka, just, ate whatever was around and no carbon footprint. How awesome would that be?
God help us all. But, again, this is philosophy is what makes the difference. When people select their values, are they going to value a naked planet above all else, or are they going to choose their own happiness, their own good life as the highest value? And that latter one is what we need in order to preserve liberty, in order to preserve a culture that respects reason and science. This is a question of philosophy. And in order to get there, people need to be more selfish. I mean, your niece should want to travel because she has one life to live.
Yes.
I mean, if the whole world needs to end for her to live a good life, I would still say she should go with the good life. Obviously, it's a false choice. No one is ever going to need to make. But Orwell in 1984, or Winston within the book 1984, wrote down, if there's any hope, it's with the proletarians. And I would say I prefer to say, if there's any hope, it's with the selfish. It's with the selfish. If people are selfish, actually selfish, they want a good life for themselves, not short-term, mindless self-indulgence, but actually a good life, we're gonna be fine. We're gonna land on our feet as a culture. But we need people to be selfish.
And don't buy into that premise. Rand always talks about check your premise, but it's just accepted now that it is bad to use the earth, that it is bad to disturb the earth. It is bad to, even in California, I mean, you just left California, Ruck. It's like, if you want to do something even on your land, if you want to like fill in a little piece of water or something there, if you want to do something, that's got to be voted on and accepted. And so just don't accept that premise, because we have to change the earth in order to, we have to build a fire even just to get warm. Thank you, Shadowblade. It says to human flourishing and reason, right? As you said, Ruck, it's our human. That doesn't mean you can pollute and dump, dirt, feces in your neighbors. That's obvious. It's property rights all the way. But Shadowblade's right. Our life that matters. Thank you, Rat Lover, who says Rucka is so right about philosophy.
Yeah, and if you love rats, capitalism will enable them to live as pets, or you can have an enclosed area where rats and other animals are free to have their little mini ecosystem. But they're not going to. I'm not going to sacrifice myself for the rats. All right, everybody. I think we're ready to jump over to Clubhouse, and then coming up at 7 p.m. UK time, Don Watkins, Anaya Folarin, and Dominique Samuels are going to be talking live in England, I believe. And the topic is vaccinate yourself against media bias. Now, there is a vaccine I think we can all use right now. We can all agree upon. Looking forward to that. That's coming up at 7:15 UK time. And until that time, or until a little before then, let's jump over to Clubhouse. Great show, Jonathan. Happy Finance Friday to you.
Thanks, Rucka, and thanks to everyone who's supporting us. Don is live in the UK, partly because of all of our regular supporters as subscribers and as super chatters. So we'll see you on Clubhouse, and we'll see you again on the Daily Objective as well.